Mental Health Awareness Month. This is the one time of the year that we like to highlight or think about stress, burnout, and all of the things that actually go with mental health. But what's interesting about that to me is that the rest of the year is largely silent. I've had the opportunity the last year just to be able to kind of look at it from a different perspective. When I had my last show, I was on a journey of imposter syndrome and overcoming it and just opening up and being authentic about what it was that I was feeling. And when I think about Mental Health Awareness Month, there are just so many things that kind of come to mind, stories. I published a blog this morning. I've been on this writing journey where I decided that I was going to publish a blog every day for 30 days for the Mental Health Awareness Month. And this morning, I was actually thinking about a story probably about 10 years ago. I was running a claim office in Maryland, had been number one or two in my sales career, which is kind of where I've always been. I found out later that, for me, producing was a way that I could show and feel worth. If I was on the scoreboard with one or two, that I knew that I was okay. But the reality was that if I wasn't number one, I was anxious and irritated and just had all these things that were going on that, well, we all know where they led to and in the journey that I am currently on. But, again, it was about 10 years ago. I'm sitting in my office and there's papers everywhere in a neat, organized way. But had been working on all these deals and I needed somebody to come in and support me. I needed somebody to come in and kind of organize my chaos, if you will. I knew where everything was, but things were falling through the cracks. I really needed somebody to kind of keep up with the pace that I was in. I always had to win. Even, as we talk about this, there are these tinges of guilt, I guess is the word that you could say. I would always be the one that would have to send the last email. So if it was 12 o'clock or I would get up in the middle of the night, I'd be thinking about work, I would send an email. I didn't really care, or a text message. I didn't care what time it was. To some degree, I kind of do that now. I get up in the middle of the night, have these ideas, I write them out, and then I'll send a text message or an email to someone. Back then, it was for different reasons. It was much more competitive, much more about the deal. And I needed somebody to organize my chaos. So I remember meeting with a couple of candidates and no one felt right. And then I met with this one and she was amazing. She came in, we just vibed. And when we were sitting in the conference room, she had no experience. She was actually in radio advertising. And there was just this connection. Like I knew that this could be somebody that I could really teach and train and mold and could really just become the extension of me that I always dreamt that I could have. The problem with that was I was a great manager, but I was a horrible leader. I would go into the office and I would do all the jobs. And then she would come in and she's like, "Hey, do you need anything?" And I would say, no. I basically handicapped myself because in my mind, it was easier for me to just do it than it was to explain to her actually how it was or how I needed to have it done. And I think this went on for several months. I'm paying this girl a very hefty salary to come in and she would do some things. And then she was a self starter. Like she was super amazing, still is. But she would go around and she would learn everybody else's job. And then she would try to take on things because I wouldn't give her stuff to do. And she didn't know that, at home, at least, things were bad. I talk about the relationship I have with my son. I talk about my own trauma and the dealing of the things that I had to go through to come out the other side of where I am today. But I thought that going into work every day, that there was like these two camps. There was these two images of this successful business guy who moved at the speed of light and was making deals and winning contests and regions and all these trophies and all of the things that go with all of that. Reality was I had a son who I had a very fragmented relationship. My marriage was in trouble, but if I could just do the deal, then I would be all worth it. It's so insane. Like I really thought that I carried the entire region or the weight of the company on my shoulders. It's so arrogant. Like in retrospect, completely arrogant. But here we are in this day to day, and she walks in the door and she slams it shut and she says, "What is your problem?" And I remember looking at her and I said, "Excuse me?" And she said, "We need to talk." And I kind of looked at her again and I didn't want the confrontation, but I was okay with it. And she said, "You hired me to do a job, didn't you?" And I said, "Yes, I did." "Well, then why won't you let me do it?" "You told me that you were going to train me. You told me you were going to mentor me. You told me all of these things, and all you do is ignore me. You come in here, you shut your door, and you haven't taught me anything in the months I've been here. I am supposed to be here to support you and to help you do your job more efficiently. But Alan, I came here to learn and to be mentored." And right there, I broke down. It all just kind of came out, and there were tears that were coming down my face, and I was trying so hard to push them back, and they just came. She looked at me and she's like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I said, "I'm not okay. I'm not." I thought in my mind that everyone saw the success person, but didn't see the broken one. That was such a lie. She said, "Everyone knows that there's stuff going on under the surface, that you're on edge, you're irritable, you're not connected to anybody here. And we're all here to support you. We're all here to help you succeed, but we want to succeed too. We want to be part of the dream and the vision." And it made me stop for a second. And when I looked at her, I couldn't believe the courage that it had. I mean, how many of us would be willing to talk to our boss that way? If something's going on and you see something that's not working or it's not correct, would you just continue to come in? Some people might think, you know what? I'm getting a check. I'll just be here and I'll do whatever and I can screw off. But the amount of courage it took for this person to be able to shut my door and to look at me and to be able to tell me and to speak her truth. Even now, as I think about it, it's just so amazing and humbling, because that was the day that I learned how to be a leader and how important my mental health was as a leader. And as I fought back the tears and I started to explain to her some of the things that were going on in my personal life, gave me a hug. It was a hug that I desperately needed, but it was the ability to connect as a leader that changed everything for me, because I stopped seeing the people that were reporting to me as just a means to an end. I saw them as something different. I saw them as people with their own lives, with their own needs, their own issues, their own traumas, their own pain, and that we were all in this together. My role as a leader was to show them that it was going to be okay. And that was something that I was not willing to do. And I remember the tone and the relationship of us had changed. And I had now brought her into everything. And we used to joke because she was super high energy and I wasn't. And when we would go on road trips, it was almost like a rush of that. And I needed to decompress. I was very grateful for the stuff that she did, but I was also at the same time take it down like 5 notches. But she taught me how to be a leader. She taught me that the role that I had was to shape the vision of the company, but to also to connect to the people who were there to support. And as we think about that during mental health awareness, as leaders, we oftentimes forget that our roles are to shape the vision, but to motivate the individuals that have bought into our vision to begin with. And that person really taught me how to lead. And I remember being so much more open about my life and about the victories and the not so great success stories, and just letting people in the office be part of that, being able to come in and to celebrate and to walk with us when we didn't have reason to celebrate. But what I found is that when you're authentic as a leader and you ask people to do things, but they're now coming to it as a place of trust, I guess is what you could say, for lack of a better word, is that they trust you because they know you and they know that maybe you don't have all the answers, and that being a leader doesn't mean having all the answers all the time. And I remember as I had started my first podcast and was very open, authentically talking about not having all the answers and really suffering from imposter syndrome to some degree, because as you're growing and you're scaling and you have all these people from all across the country who are buying into your vision as leaders, if we're not attuned to connecting and we're isolating and we're withdrawing, that just leads to more stories. And it's just this repetitious cycle. And I remember being able to come into this room and to share my stories and to speak my truth and to have people come into my office and say, I see you and I respect you and I'm willing to go to the end of the earth for you because of it. And I would have people who would come into my office and they would sit down and they would close the door and they would tell me a story about what was happening to them and their family, something that maybe a raised wasn't going to be an issue, or that it was somebody who just needed support. They didn't need more money or more hours or other things. They just wanted to be heard. So as I started sharing more and more of my stories, they started really beginning to trust, know, and like me for my stories and my truth and my ability to be human. So this month, as we think about mental health awareness, as we think about leadership, as we think about employees, I wanted to think about it a little differently this time. So much about this show is spirituality and plant-based medicines and stuff like that, but it's all so important. It's so connected as a leader to be able to really dial into your introspection and to be okay speaking your truth. Whatever that truth is, someone needs to hear it. Someone in your office, somebody in your family, somebody in your circle, they need to hear your truth. And this month, as we think about Mental Health Awareness Month, it's okay to talk about it. Have the courage to be able to shut the door and to say to whoever it is, this is what I need from you. Because had that individual not done that for me so many years ago, I don't know where I would be as a leader today. So whoever you are, I applaud your courage for doing just that. And stay with us this month. If you love the show, please subscribe, tell somebody else about it, and then continue to follow neuma.health / podcast for more stories that we're going to have here, or go in and read the blog. So I have committed to writing a 30-day blog on just mental health and mental health awareness and a little bit of the journey that I have been on. This is W Wiederhold, celebrating Mental Health Awareness Month and telling you thank you.